I want to continue looking at the story and life of Joseph in the book of Genesis, in particular chapter 41. The story is starting to really evolve now around what God is doing in Joseph's life. And as we're heading to the last chapters of this great book, some interesting things are beginning to happen with Joseph. So I want to pick it up in chapter 41 and beginning in verse 28, and it says this. It is just as I said to Pharaoh, God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You will be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He made him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. So now here's an interesting picture. If you can kind of go back in the early chapters of Genesis where it talks about Joseph being thrown into a hole in the ground or a dry well by his brothers. And now he has the Pharaoh's ring on his finger, and he's riding in a chariot, having control over everything in the land. And nobody in the kingdom is any greater than him except Pharaoh. It's amazing what God can do sometimes. And so I wonder if we kind of have a short view of God's abilities to create incredible circumstances and provide incredible opportunities to us. Because many of us, most of us probably, have never found ourselves in a dry well looking up wondering if we're going to die that day. Yet that was the case with Joseph at one stage in his life. And now he finds himself in this incredible place of influence and power and authority. So you never know what God's going to do. You never know what kind of opportunity God's going to give you to serve him in a very unique and special place. So that's the first thing I want us to think about today, is that God might choose you to do something very important, very unique, very special, that he has designed you for. And maybe everything in your life has been leading to that very unique set of responsibilities that God is designing for you to be responsible for. The second thing is this. If he does open up an opportunity, serve the Lord in that situation, whether anybody else understands that you're serving him or not. Because you got to think about this. Pharaoh had great expectations of what Joseph was going to do. He had great responsibility. And so it could have been that Joseph would have taken the attitude, I've got to serve the Pharaoh. That's my responsibility here. And I'm sure that the Pharaoh looked at Joseph as he was making decisions and carrying on his responsibilities, and looked at him as a great manager. He was obviously wise, that's why Pharaoh gave him the responsibility. But I think it was evident to Joseph and everything that we know about him that Joseph knew that ultimately he was serving God's purposes. So if God happens to give you a very unique responsibility and people are looking to you and they're expecting you to make very important decisions, I hope that you will see that as a responsibility that ultimately has come from God. That stewardship, that trust is really something that God has arranged for in your life so that you can carry out His plan and His will and reflect His grace and His purposes in that situation. So, don't be surprised if God gives you something very special and very unique. And when He does, serve that responsibility as if you're serving Him directly. Even if there are other people watching and expecting great things for you, and you feel the weight of that pressure and that level of responsibility, know ultimately that it's God who has put you in that place, and serve Him well. God bless you today.